can't believe it, Oklahoma, all this hatred fell on you. In the quiet hush of morning rush, evil blasted through. Jesus, comfort her. I saw her cry. She was running through the streets, searching for her child. All the lives hurt, all the children, all swept up by design. Sleeping angels in the clouds this night, cradled in his arms. Oh, I saw that child lying limp in his arms, and I saw that man's heart winding down. Now we look for reasons why our hearts will ask, we cannot reply. We have seen this evil now with the will to kill and eyes that prowl. You think it's quiet for the heartland now? The storm has just begun. In the ruins lies the tears it holds, touched by hands that worked all night. As I watch my heart is torn apart, I see Oklahoma, hold on tight. Oh, I saw that child trembling in fear. She was bloody, burnt and wild, holding on to anyone, holding on to love is best, helping those who are all lost. For we are living this evil still with broken hearts and challenge wills. Justice, stop this hatred, Waco instilled. The beast, he will not win. In the minutes and the days to come, and the years, they will hurt still. I swear I won't forget the suffering here. I know they never will. Jesus, comfort me. I saw Oklahoma cry. She was searching through the ruins still for more lives. Jesus, comfort her. I saw her cry. She was running through the streets, searching for a child.
We've got an amazing guest coming up, actually two amazing guests coming up, joining us via video Skype in the next segment. Oklahoma City investigators, one of them who was there when the bombing, in the aftermath, that is coming up in the next segment. We are continuing our series of interviews to document what really happened in Oklahoma City on the record this week, and I'll do it next week and into the new year, at least once or twice a week, because there's so many amazing people that are interviewed and then some that aren't in this film, A Noble Lie, Oklahoma City, 1995. Jane Graham, the head of HUD, who was in the building and saw known feds planting bombs. She didn't know what they were at the time, big gray sticks of butter. They said they were with the telephone company. You've got the inventor of the neutron bomb saying clearly that there were explosives inside the building, the newscast admitting it as well. You've got the former head of Air Force Weapons Development breaking it down. The mother of Police Officer of the Year, Terrence Yakey, the first to respond, who saw the feds running around involved. They, of course, killed him. It's an amazing film, and you need to show it to police and military especially, because the Obama administration has put out, 3 different memos saying a new Oklahoma City would really help them. They don't even veil it. They don't say we're going to do it. They just say it would really help us, and if there's a new one, we're going to blame the right wing. And barring that, we're in deep trouble. And I see all of it moving towards that. Now, our exposure of it may stop them. And I've been talking a lot more in the last year about Oklahoma City again, as you know. I mean, I made a 40-minute film within a film, and I've made a lot of films that are like 3 hours long, like Road to Tyranny, that's really 3 different subjects. The history of terror, the New World Order, stage terror, then Oklahoma City, the First World Trade Center, and then into 9/11. Now, this video is available at Infowars.com, and it supports the filmmakers and, of course, my operation when you get it. But bottom line, get it, air it on Access TV, have local showings in your area. Just like with my films, get my films. You're authorized to make copies of my films. I want all of my videos out there to everybody because this is a life and death situation. I mean, you watch my police state films, you'll understand what's now unfolding. Now, let's stop right there. Don Browning is a retired Oklahoma City police officer, former U.S. Marine and Vietnam veteran. Don worked in the K-9 unit and was part of the search and rescue team at the Murrah building after the bombing. And we're going to go through some important questions. And riding shotgun with him is Holland Vanden Nieuwenhof. He is a native of Oklahoma and served as a rifle squad leader in Marine Corps. Holland decided to get off the bench one day and started writing and passing out leaflets that exposed government corruption and cover-ups. These efforts led him to collaborate with the Oklahoma Bombing Investigation Committee in their efforts to uncover the truth behind the OKC bombing. He was instrumental in the formation of the first low-power FM station in Oklahoma to fight the globalists. I had that part that focused on truth and freedom issues, carrying my show, of course. Holland engages in a variety of endeavors to spread awareness in his community. Absolutely, and fight the criminals that have taken this country over. So both these gentlemen join us, good American patriots and Marines fighting the tyranny. And from my memory, Don, I've never talked to you, but I believe you were one of the guys who got threatened, too. We've talked to the other guys, some of the people off record, Department of Defense, bomb disposal, you name it, where they said, don't ask questions about the bombs, or we know where your daughter goes to school. Just incredible. But Don Browning, great to have you joining us via video Skype today, and we appreciate your courage coming on air.
Thank you, sir.
You know, I could babble all day, but why are you here? What did you see? What is most important for us to understand? And Holland, you can pretty much, because you know him well and have studied Oklahoma even more than I have, where do you think we should go first?
Well, we can start with the day of the bombing, of course, when Don responded, and get into the evacuations that were later denied that they took place, and the explosives that were found inside the building. Don, you were the first to respond, one of the first to respond to the bombing, right?
Yes, sir.
And you and your dog, Gunny, right?
Correct.
And one of the main points of the movie, what we try to emphasize, is the fact that there were several evacuations after the initial bombing that they were later denied. They said they were false alarms or hoaxes. But in A Noble Lie, we have videotape from a sheriff's deputy taken during one of the evacuations that shows the ATF pulling weapons and plastic explosives out of the building. No one has seen this tape. Well, some people have, but it's been passed down hand to hand. We digitally remastered the tape. No one has seen it in this quality, and it's never seen widespread publicity.
Yeah, by the way, that's the kind of stuff that's in this film, is many of your team have been on this for over a decade. I mean, this is a obsession to get the murder of these children out. I mean, that's why it's so important.
Well, this is my hometown. I grew up in Oklahoma City. And once I started realizing what had happened, I felt it was my duty to expose the truth. I saw that no one else, other people were doing it, but I wanted to really get the story out to the people. We found a team. We got a good director's team, production, editing, and we made the movie as the best way to get the message out to the masses.
Exactly, and it's the only well-done testament in modern times. So let's get into why Don is such an incredible witness and such an amazing expert.
Well, Don, you were actually in the building in the K-9 rescue units, and during one of the evacuations, what were they doing during the evacuations?
As far as the initial evacuation, we're just trying to determine the location of the victims, really trying to determine how to remove some of the debris. At about 10:30, 11 o'clock that first morning, we were halted for the first time. Ordered out of the building for no other reason than they wanted to secure the building. On a limited access, we were allowed back in. In fact, I worked for a little bit in the area with Dana Bradley, who's had her leg amputated, being pinned in the building. Worked in that area for the next little bit, and then finally we were ordered out by the U.S. Marshals. We were sequestered pretty much on the south side of the Murrah building in the courtyard area. Was kind of held at bay, told that we'd be allowed to go back in and search, but there were files that were so critical to the government that until those files were found, there would be no more rescue or recovery.
And there were people still inside?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. There was a gentleman that was, apparently he was already deceased, but he was still laying, bleeding out on the south face of the building.
And you could see that, and they wouldn't let you recover?
Yes, sir.
And because they had to recover documents?
Correct.
What's important about that, Alex, is that maybe one of the reasons that this happened is that their priority was on the documents for some reason, recovering those documents to the detriment of the people who were trapped inside and died. As the Oklahoma City Police Chief said on camera, that we lost people because of the evacuations. We lost people because of this.
Sure, and we have all the newscasts where the governors, they found more bombs. They're taking them out. That's another device the bomb squad has. And here's Don Browning, who was there, with the dog, and was a police officer and also a Marine veteran. So just amazing to see what was going on. We only have those newscasts. What did you see with them and the reported bombs?
There was two different incidents where they claimed that they had determined that there was a secondary explosives device. They quarantined that area. I did not actually see them remove the device from the building. It was more to the northwest corner of the building, from what I understood, in the debris. And I was still yet on the south side, close to the elevator shafts.
But these evacuations did take place. We have affidavits from first responders saying that there were at least two other bombs discovered in the rubble, that one of these bombs was timed to go off 10 minutes after the first explosion. This is a typical terrorist tactic, is to have at least two bombs, one to attract responders and the second bomb to inflict even greater casualties. So this could have been worse. That's a bad thing about Oklahoma City, is as bad as it was, it could have been much, much worse.
Now, going through some of these questions, what really got you asking questions, and I'm going from memory and secondhand, Don, how did things progress with the feds telling you to get out of there? Were you ever threatened like some of the other police were?
Yes, sir. At one point that morning, I was advised that we were going to be arrested by federal marshals if we did not leave the immediate area. Like I said, we didn't want to be a hindrance, didn't really understand what was going at that point. So we did withdraw and stayed sequestered there on the courtyard area in hopes that we were going to be allowed to go back in. And interestingly, we were advised at that point that no police dog would be allowed back in the building, that there would be the search and rescue dogs would be coming in from private sources.
So they couldn't trust the Oklahoma City police, but they'd have some special people coming. I want to get into all the technicals and the horse patrol being mobilized before the bombing and what Terrence Yakey saw, and really the key points here with you, sir. But bottom line, from 16 years of researching this, being in it, and what you know and seeing this film, as a police officer, as an investigator, as a veteran, with a lot of different perspectives and wisdom, what do you believe really happened with Oklahoma City?
I personally believe that there was a secondary explosion. I don't know whether it was sympathetic to the truck explosion and that it was just armament that was stored in the Murrah building. But due to the destructive nature of what occurred, in particularly closer to the east side of the building on the south side, where there was just total destruction, I do believe that there was at least a sympathetic explosion.
Exactly. The damage pattern to the building, when you look at it, is asymmetrical to the truck bomb. It's offset from the major damage to the building. The crater is offset from the major bite, as we show in the movie.
It's on the other end of the building from it, and we can see it right behind you there. The truck bomb was basically where your shoulder is Holland, your shoulder that's facing inward towards Don, and then if you see back in the corner where the earphone is, where Don is, that's where you had columns blown off at the base. And Parton says that it was specifically charges on those columns.
Yes, we interviewed General Parton. I believe one of the first interviews anyone's ever given him on video. And he was a former head of Air Force weapons development. He spent 20 years blowing things up for the military and conducting bomb damage analysis. This is his job. He saw what happened in Oklahoma City. He saw the damage. He knew it could not be an ammonium nitrate truck bomb. So he analyzed, did his famous Parton report, which concluded that the columns inside the Murrah building were destroyed due to brisance damage, meaning that there were contact explosives on the columns, that the truck bomb was not the sole cause of destruction that day. That truck bomb did do a lot of damage, and it was powerful. But what it would have done to the Murrah building was basically blown in all the windows and damaged the facade, and certainly would have
that's
killed,
what you see in Saudi Arabia with trucks full of military grade, is it just blows the facade off and blows things through the building, sometimes both sides, but the columns are right there.
The supporting columns were there, and the Murrah building was constructed in the 70s with bomb resistance in mind, because there was a lot more political instability going on in the post-60s era back then.
Yeah, communist bombing stuff.
Yeah, exactly. It was a federal building. It was designed with bombs in mind. And those columns would not have failed due to a truck bomb. That is an impossibility. In fact, the American Society of Civil Engineers was not even allowed on site to do their own analysis. They did an analysis, but they were kept 200 feet back.
Well, that's another issue. They blow up the wreckage, more than half the building standing there. They act super suspicious. They threaten people. Hoppy Heidelberg, police officers, doctors that show up. The ATF's in their full gear like a minute after. As a police officer, Don, watching them act so suspicious, I mean, what does that look like to you? And what did other police officers tell you off record their view was on this?
One of the bomb officers was describing to me one of what he thought was one of the secondary devices, and he said that he had a clock real similar to it sitting on his desk, which was just a 3-road stick of dynamite with an alarm clock stuck on it, just kind of a decoration type thing. And I really was serious about trying to convince me that that's what they thought was a secondary device. And of course, we got a little more involved in our conversations, and he said that they did find nitrous bottle end caps, other things that would help accelerate the info bomb.
Exactly. One of the stories they propagated to cover one of the evacuations that 3 different bomb squads had mistaken a toy alarm clock as a real bomb, which is ludicrous, and no reason to evacuate the entire building before that could actually be concluded and ascertained on the site. You wouldn't evacuate the building before you actually determine that it was a bomb, especially because there's people inside bleeding out.
But you've got pieces of the building blown the opposite direction away from the truck bomb on top of the building across the street.
Exactly. That truck bomb exploded on the north side of the building, yet north of that, across the street, there were chunks of the Murrah building that somehow transported themselves against the blast wave of the truck bomb. And that's the thing about this whole story, is that it is a conclusive fact that truck bomb was not the sole cause of agent. Yet, the cover-up has gone into effect. Everyone on the scene knows that the truck bomb was not the sole cause of destruction. And we see how the mainstream media and the government is able to manipulate a story, take what is actually reality, which is that there were bombs inside the building that did most of the damage, and change it to something else, destroy the crime scene while there were still bodies inside. A month after the bombing, they demolished that building, and there were still a number of people inside, deceased persons, of course, but they were in such a rush that they wouldn't even recover the bodies. Don was there for that.
Right. Yeah, we did pull the... in fact, we had located one of the female victims that we had to leave inside the building on the night of the 4th. And the building was pretty unstable in that area. But rather than trying to shore anything up, we were removed. The building was brought down, and we were allowed to go back in the 29th of May and research the area, and did locate that lady along with one of her female companion workers and another gentleman that had died in the blast.
Well, I know this is hard to talk about. A lot of key questions we haven't gotten to yet here. Don Browning, retired Oklahoma City police officer, canine rescue handler, was there right after one of the first people there on the scene, former U.S. Marine, Vietnam veteran as well. Could you tell us, you've told us about the marshals threatening the police. What about FBI threatening you specifically?
Within the weeks that followed after the actual occurrence, FBI agents were assigned to set up a communication station at the Oklahoma City Police Canine and Equine Center. And they were in and out of our office through the day. Of course, we were supposed to just conduct business as normal, and they were still concluding their investigations. But was told more than once or twice by agents in the area that people like my wife and I would have ended up dead by not going along with what we knew to be true.
Wow, so you're a decorated Vietnam veteran, police officer, one of the heroes that responded when there could have been other bombs, and it was thought there were other bombs, and the FBI agents in the police office are telling you, do what you're told or you and your wife are dead. And you're saying this on record here, sir.
Yes, sir.
Please elaborate for the millions of listeners exactly what happened. And if you'd like to name names, I'm not afraid of these people.
As far as names, I really don't know. I do know there was an agent, Jim Height, that had contacted me that was concerned about the health of the dogs right about the same time. His story was that the building had been sprayed with an agent similar to Agent Orange to try to slow decomposition, and that there was supposedly was complaints that the odor of the decomp was becoming an issue to the surrounding area and the community. Again, there were just different things that occurred that just absolutely defied my understanding why they would use something such as Agent Orange without warning us of what they were doing.
But I mean, separately, did they phone call you? I mean, did an agent in the hall say, "Hey, you better do what you're told, or you and your wife are dead"? I mean, how would they talk to you?
No, it was person to person in the hallway. They were in the office there at the Canine Center.
So they'd say, "Do what you're told, or you and your wife are dead."
Right.
And what did you say to that?
It wasn't too much. I'd say I kind of yell right, and I was not at that time was really not in a good mood to hear their crap. I had a major from our department that was telling me that I needed to find new friends, and he thought I was part of the militia.
Okay, so they're intimidating you, they're isolating you, and then they're threatening you and your wife in a hallway. I mean, it's so unbelievable. You probably had one of the perpetrators right there with you. Oh my God.
Well, I mean, that's one of the things about this. When you see the behavior of the federal agents on the scene and afterwards, it makes you question what their mission is entirely, because they were not responding in a professional manner. They pulled people back to pull off the videotapes. Don, you witnessed that.
Yes, I watched while we were being sequestered there in the courtyard. I did watch agents with FBI raid jackets on, removing video cameras from the corners of the Murrah building.
Tapes that we've never seen. Those cameras would have recorded everything that happened in front of the Murrah building. You know, if we are wrong, and they want to prove it. You know, if you can show the tape that shows McVeigh getting out of that truck and that truck causing the damage to that building, I'll go home and I'll never talk to you.
Well, they've declared national security. Some good FBI agents have gone public, as you know, in the L.A. Times 9 years ago, and they said they've seen the tapes. There's 20-something of them, and it does show McVeigh with a bunch of other men, and that's why the government doesn't want it released.
Exactly, and the Secret Service timeline records that when they looked at the tape, that there were suspects exiting the truck 3 minutes after it was parked. Plural. That means multiple suspects. But to this day, they insist McVeigh was the only person who drove that truck up. Don Browning mentioned Dana Bradley earlier. During the trial of McVeigh in Denver, they could only produce one witness who could place McVeigh in Oklahoma City. That was Dana Bradley. She lost her children and her mother and her leg in the bombing. She gained some notoriety because she was trapped in the rubble, and they had to amputate on site. Under cross-examination, she admitted that when she was in the Social Security office waiting in line, she saw that Ryder truck pull up. Tim McVeigh got out of one side, and a suspect, another man, got out of the other side. Under cross-examination, admitted this. And then the federal prosecutors tried to drag her name through the mud and say that she had misremembered the day, that it was another day that she had lost her entire family and her leg, that she saw that Ryder truck pull up with two people. It's just ludicrous and insulting.
Unbelievable. We have Holland Vanden Nieuwhof, investigator, filmmaker, and Don Browning, Oklahoma City police officer, U.S. Marine Vietnam veteran, was one of the first to be there. We'll talk about Terrence Yankee and his murder, another police officer that responded on the other side. Folks, I don't like risking my life to expose these people, but we've got to. They're getting ready to do it again. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Oklahoma City's real simple. The ATF even got a Ryder truck and practiced blowing it up a few months before in New Mexico. That even came out on Discovery Channel. They were embarrassed that they wanted to get anti-terror funding and laws passed that they've now gotten through, of course, in '93. So they torched Waco. That blew up in their face. And so then they carried out Oklahoma City to blame it on domestic groups and on the states' rights movement. And to make Bill Clinton look like a victim, he could demonize talk radio and conservatives. And I mean, it was so obvious by their instant response in minutes. It was all scripted. And I remember being in Austin and people were mailing the tapes down and putting them on Access TV. That's why I went down and got an Access TV show in '95, was watching the soap opera every week of the tapes mailed down to patriots from Oklahoma City and the other patriots locally putting it on, with the bombs coming out of the building and General Parton at press conferences and Hoppy Heidelberg being threatened and, you know, all this stuff going on. And then you find out that so many of these other events have been staged, and then to have these police officers killed and threatened, and Department of Defense people that were there for bomb disposal threatened. We know where your daughter lives, where your daughter goes to school. Again, ladies and gentlemen, you can say, oh, well, I would, punch him in the nose or whatever. But imagine being in a police headquarters and FBI guys come over when you're walking down the hall and say, you and your wife are going to get it if you don't stop what you're doing. I mean, wow. I mean, why would an FBI agent do that unless they were involved? I mean, you're now threatening to kill cops and their wives. That's who runs this government. And the same crew is in charge now. The guy that's the Attorney General, he was Deputy Attorney General then, and in lawsuits, his emails and memos have come out where he's like, April 20th, we got to get to Oklahoma, and this is D-Day. These are quotes, and cover this up. Cover what up? Cover what up?
Happened in Oklahoma City. Eric Holder was in charge of the investigation for the Justice Department. He managed the investigation, later in charge of the Trinity cover-up, now Attorney General of the United States, and now he has Gunwalker all over him. This man has killed thousands of people. That's in the headlines now. Why is it so hard to believe that an operation in 1995 killed 168 people?
Yes, sir. That's a good point, Mr. Browning. Again, retired Oklahoma City police officer, was one of the first to respond. I mean, that's a false flag staged event right there, where they weren't just letting them get sold at gun shops. That was the cover. We now know 18-wheelers into Mexico, and in the federal cases, drugs back in. I mean, Eric Holder's just a mob boss.
Well, you were talking about, you had Hoppy Heidelberg on the show earlier this week. You were talking about the threats he received. What's interesting about that is that the FBI agent who threatened Hoppy Heidelberg is named John Hursley. John Hursley was basically the FBI's representative to the prosecution during the trial. John Hursley was there with his partner threatening Hoppy Heidelberg with a gun if he kept on talking about what had happened behind closed doors at the grand jury that indicted McVeigh and Nichols and others unknown. John Hursley is now the go-to guy for the History Channel and whoever else wants to do an apology for the official story. John Hursley is there in a suit and tie with the American flag behind him, representing the United States government. That man is a thug. He threatens people with guns, and he's on TV trying to explain the official story. In fact, he wrote a book, Ghost wrote a book about the bombing, about the official story, and the title is called Simple Truths. Simple Truths, which is always what the noble lie is cloaked in, a simple truth.
Don, what were you looking into that made FBI agents threaten not only you, but to kill your wife?
I was trying to follow up. I had a lot of citizens that was calling, giving information. I was trying to follow through with different tidbits of information I was getting, even from persons such as Janie Carverdale and Glenn and Wilbur and his wife. I felt obligated as a police officer that we should be looking into all those things, and they were pretty frustrated that for the most part they were being ignored or being told it didn't matter. It was similar to like Dana Bradley that we mentioned earlier. I was called into the U.S. Attorney's Office and was questioned as to what she said to me the entire time that I was near her. I wanted to know every if and but, every I, every T. She was groaning. She was in pain. There was no noticeable conversation that came from her. But
they wanted to know what she'd seen and what she'd told you.
Exactly. And
this is a woman pinned under giant girders who lost her leg, and they're wanting to know, what did she say? What did she say? So as a police officer, you're saying the feds were acting super guilty.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That it was. Well, I was told at the time that they were going to have to refute what she was saying, and apparently she was delirious due to her injuries and her losses.
I bet. She'd lost family members again in there. Incredible. Let's talk about Terrence Yeagy. Tell us about this gentleman who was one of the first people, along with you, to respond. Running into the building that had just been devastated, and then what happened to him. Why this is so important.
Well, Terry, first off, was a remarkable young man. He was very likable. I did not work with him shoulder to shoulder in our assignments at the police department. However, I did work a lot of extra jobs and security work with him. Not good friends, but friends enough that, especially after the bombing, I would always tease Terry about, man, you're my hero. You're just my hero.
Yeah, well, he made the cover of Newsweek.
Right. Yeah.
Because he hauled a lot of people out, right?
Yes, sir. And Terry, bless his heart, right off the bat was concerned because there were so many FBI and ATF agents on the scene, even when he drove up.
You drive up and there's feds in their gear running around everywhere. What, 30 seconds after?
Yeah, he showed up just minutes after. Terrence Yeagy was the first officer to respond. He pulls up, and there are FBI agents on scene. The FBI headquarters is 5 miles away. They have no business. Why are ATF agents and FBI agents at the scene of the bombing, sitting there watching what's going on when the first officer to respond pulls up?
Well, they were proud of their work. I mean,
well, there was an operation going on.
Yeah, blowing up some kids in a daycare. That's what tough guys do.
Well, Don, you were given privy information about a surveillance operation by the FBI that was going on at the time, right? Concerning the vehicle description?
Yeah, they always claim that, so when it happens, it was a sting went bad, yeah.
Well, no, quite interestingly, the morning of the bombing, as I was en route downtown, they were simulcasting a 3-vehicle description along with the 7 Persian males that were supposedly occupying these vehicles that they had left on the interstate systems from the Murrah building area. And surprisingly, we were told that these vehicles were still under surveillance and continued to progress.
The FBI said that?
Yes.
So the FBI told the police that they were watching the suspects.
But the building blows up and they don't stop the suspects.
But no, please don't understand. This supposedly was afterwards. This was supposedly suspects of the bombing itself.
Sure, yeah.
That went on through all the morning up until about 1:30. At that point, I had an opportunity to speak to one of the FBI agents that had kind of slowed to take a break and asked him what the status was, and was informed at that point that that was disinformation, that it was designed to throw the press off, and was nothing but disinformation. I became very irate at the time and that they were broadcasting this to a 5-state area. It was not only throwing all the media off, it was throwing every cop in the world off as well, if this was fictitious information.
Well, the perps want to throw folks off. So Terrence Yagey pulls up a minute or so after, and it's crawling with FBI and ATF. And then what happens next?
Well, he goes ahead and works with the recovery. From what I understand, over the next few days after that incident, he had started to complain to Janet Reno and to others about the treatment that he was getting from the FBI agents, and also from the fact that there were so many of them on the scene. It was quite concerning to him. We talked a little bit about some of his concerns and some of my concerns, but we both were still, I'd say it still wasn't really that trustworthy even of one another. It was a time where you really didn't know who you could trust completely or not.
Sure, if you're not a completely unconscious moron, you pull up and it's like watching a guy run out of a bank with a mask on and a bag of money. You know who you pull up and there's feds running around in their full gear right after it happens. You're like, well, what's going on? They're like, oh, nothing. In fact, there were doctors and people there who they would say, patch me up. I was up on the 9th floor, and the doctors are like, well, there's nothing wrong with you. You weren't up there. And he's like, well, you're going to end up dead if you don't do what I say. I mean, this death threatening. I just can't imagine people I'm a Fed, and I'm going to death threat police and everybody else because I'm God. I mean, it sounds like a bunch of lunatics.
Yeah, it was interesting, like I said, with Terry, in that when Terry died, he was not treated as a normal police officer. There was no autopsy performed. He of course, was viewed by a medical examiner, and they did complete the death certificate and follow-up reports. But no autopsy, nothing to describe why the injuries that Terry had suffered, where they came from, or what type of injuries those were.
But we do have, thanks to Colonel Craig Roberts going from memory, we do have the basic medical examiner's drawings, and of course, you guys have talked to some of the witnesses and some of the sheriff's department, I know, from the county over that did show up reportedly, and so go over this in detail. The feds are like digging dirt up. Terrence Yagey's obviously been tortured. I mean, as a police officer, go over what happened to him.
Terry had numerous lacerations on his wrists, across his elbows, on both arms. He had a long cut that began just underneath his right ear and extended past his Adam's apple. There was another small hesitation cut on the left side of his throat.
You think that was when they were just threatening him to slit his throat to get the answers of where the stuff was?
Well, I was told by the district attorney when I went to the grand jury that it was due to EMTs trying to save Terry's life.
Oh. And, of course, he'd been dead. Well, I mean, let's go over it. I mean, let's talk about how he died, because, I mean, he was telling his partner, I got feds behind me last time he was heard from, right?
Terry was transporting documents and evidence that he had collected. He called his friend, another police officer, said, let's meet for dinner. As soon as I shake these feds who are following me, we'll meet. Terry went to El Reno. Terry grew up in El Reno, Oklahoma. He knew all the back roads. And his car is found on federal property. El Reno has a federal prison. The reason the federal government was able to come in and take control of the investigation was that his body was found on federal land.
Yeah, so they did that again. Wow.
Exactly. And when he had handcuff marks on his wrists, there was mud packed into his wounds. There was no way he could have drug himself through the mud 1.5 miles through creeks and trees while bleeding, and then decide to shoot himself at an angle at the top of his head, coming out the lower part of his jaw.
Sure, so let me ask this. Cops, everybody shows up. I mean, you talk about the county shows up, and they said, yeah, the feds were covering it up, and the police all just stand around and, well, they killed him. Because all the police we've talked to, yeah, they killed him. And I guess that's just what feds are God. They want to kill cops. Go ahead,
Well, that's what was interesting to me at that point was anytime we had a police officer involved in an automobile accident or anything outside of the city limits, the city still sent investigative officers out to investigate the accident, if nothing else, to supplement whatever agency did do the investigation. With Terry, it was just basically our agency just washed their hands of it and turned it completely over to the FBI. And
yeah, whenever a police officer dies in Oklahoma City, there's always an autopsy. A couple of years ago, a police officer died in a car wreck. And there was no question about why he had died. He was on duty. He was responding to a call. They still performed an autopsy, yet they find a police officer just a couple years before in a field, cut, bleeding.
A year after he's the hero of Oklahoma City on the cover of Newsweek and Police Officer of the Year.
Shot in the head, and they do not perform an autopsy. Once again, it does not hold up to scrutiny at all.
Well, who was this police chief? I mean, who is either purely wicked or the biggest coward on the planet?
He was Chief Gonzalez was from the Dallas-Fort Worth area. He had been on the Dallas PD prior to his being hired with Oklahoma City. He really didn't have connections to Oklahoma City and would frequently leave for extended weekends to go play golf in Dallas. Really never did feel like he was a portion of our department at all.
So he was just a placeholder.
Yes, sir.
He was also a young patrolman in Dallas on November 22nd, 1963.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
So he's a very trustworthy person.
I mean, yeah, I don't know if he had any involvement with that, but that is his background.
Kind of like Dan Rather. Okay, continuing here. There's a lot of other points here that are important. Can you tell us about the horse patrol being mobilized for crowd control prior to the bombing?
Yes, sir. Again, that was one of the things that kind of surprised me. The horse patrol basically, through the week, did not patrol any area. They maybe once or twice, one or two of the officers would saddle up and they would go into the stockyards area.
Horses are for special events, right? I mean, big crowds, yeah.
Yes, sir. Interestingly, they had, anytime we did work a big event, they would have the county reserve would also come in and supplement the with horses and manpower, and they would act out together. The morning of the bombing, the horse patrol was going downtown in force. They claim they really don't know why they were going down there. It wasn't necessary for crowd control. They were just going down to work the downtown area. This was about a week before what we were scheduled to have an art festival. That would mandated that they would have had to be there. So it was they were coming up on some time frame where a lot of overtime was going to be required. So it was kind of surprising that they would just out of the blue decide to gather and go downtown to do this quite large horse patrol. There was probably somewhere between 8 to 10 riders and horses that were en route.
Was that order to settle up given before the bombing?
Yes, sir. They were actually leaving and would have already been downtown by the time the bomb went off, according to one of the supervisors. Had it not been for one of our officers was slow in getting ready, and they were just pulling out of the K-9 Equine Center when the bomb detonated.
All right, when we come back, I'm going to ask you, what do the rank-and-file Oklahoma City police think 16, 17 years after this tragedy that's been used to butcher the Bill of Rights and Constitution? This is another super disgusting thing we have to discuss, but, I mean, it's only going to get worse if we don't wake up to false flag terror. Don Browning, retired Oklahoma City police officer, one of the first on the scene, is our guest, along with one of the filmmakers, Holland Vanden Nieuwenhof. I'm Alex Jones. You know, I am a father. I have 3 great children. I love my wife. I love life. And I've been threatened. I've been beat up before when I was exposing the Waco situation and the trial and bullhorning the judge. And they sent 5 guys, 4 of them attacked me, beat me up pretty bad, but I beat them up too in a parking lot telling me, shut up. They broke my nose and punched me. I mean, but you know what? That was when I knew how real this was. Okay? And the federal government is run by a bunch of criminals now who just think that we're here to be doormats and our property, our children belong to them. And we can beat these people. But let me tell you, living in denial, this isn't about just criticizing the government and we come up with fanciful tales. This is a police officer who was there and saw all this, who had FBI agents threaten to kill him and his wife. Other cops got killed. Doctors got killed. Grand jurors got threatened. FBI comes to your house with guns and says, shut your mouth. Then other people come and say, you're dead if you keep this up. This is what they do. I mean, and somebody's got to call them on it. Somebody's got to realize it. That this country, I mean, they're now announcing they're going to use the military against the American people. We get the Department of Defense contact. Joe Joseph calls us and says, have you seen this? This is on the federal government's own website. And then they pull it, where they call the American people the enemy, the red group, and the government is the blue group. And, I mean, the general public is listed as the enemy. That's not the American government. You get a police officers questioning, and they go, we think you're in a militia, implying they were involved in it because they're asking questions. You cannot control reality by being delusional. You can't just say, oh, this couldn't be true, like the Austin police chief said 2 weeks ago when I was talking to him privately. And I looked in his eyes, and I could tell he's not stupid. He says he listens to the show. He knows. And he said some things privately to me. I'll get him in more trouble not saying what he said. He didn't say it's off record. He's just like, yeah, I'll probably never get promoted above Austin because I'm even on your show, but I don't care anymore. Alex, I know you're a good guy. I'll see you later. But the point is, that's not enough. I can tell our police chief's a real person. You've got to choose what side you're on. In closing, Don Browning, and people can get the film, which people have given their lives for you to be able to know this information, Noble Lie at Infowars.com. Get it out to everybody. In the 2 or 3 minutes we've got left with you and Holland, Vanden Neuenhoff, what do the other police officers around you say? Or, I mean, do they just give in to the big lie?
It's interesting. It's kind of a combination of both, where some are literally scared to death. Terry Yankee's good buddy at one point met me shortly after Terry had died, told me that I was on the right track. Please keep on pushing. Terry deserved that, but he couldn't help me. And officers, for the most part, do, or at least at this point, starting to finally come out with the feelings and emotions that they did not eat the story. They didn't battle it, but they did not eat the information that was handed out to us. Why didn't you guys get together and circle the wagons and say, we got guns too, you want to threaten us? At the time of the circling of the wagons, I don't think we felt like there was enough of us to circle, even half of the circle, so well, there wasn't at the Alamo either, but we appreciate your incredible courage, sir. But sometimes it takes some of us getting wiped out so other people can see, and then that's when we get the victory. Well, it was interesting. I'll share a comment that Stephen Jones made when I was up at McVeigh's trial. Jones came to me. He had been part of the Roger Dale Stafford defense team when Roger Dale Stafford had committed the Sirloin Stockade murders. And I had testified in that case as well. And I shook my head as I was walking up towards him coming back to the hotel. And he stopped me and he says, you know, if only 4 or 5 Oklahoma City homicide detectives would investigate this, we'd have this solved in 2 or 3 days. And I'll tell you what, sir, we're out of time, but you've been gracious enough to be on the nightly news tonight. I want to start over where we left off here. Incredible. If you believe in this information and want to support its viral spread, go to the InfoWars store at Infowars.com. We've got the new G.I. Joe InfoWars T-shirts. We've got the incredible Pro Pure gravity-fed filters available at Infowars.com in the store. We've got a new DVD, Scientists Under Attack, the Don't Tread on Me flag. We've got all sorts of different bumper stickers to help spread the rebellion virally. It's all there. Wristbands, citizen rule books in every order. Order online at Infowars.com today. The water filters, the canteens, it's all there. Infowars.com.
About everything, and I remember Chris Emery's passion about the subject of Oklahoma City, his outrage at the injustice, his sympathy for the victims, and he was committed to doing this film. And it's been 7 years, and every now and again I'll think, well, gee, and I hadn't seen Chris Emery since. I thought, well, gee, I wonder what's happened to that film. Well, so finally, here we have the final product, and I think it's a terrific success. I just think it's marvelous. So we're very happy to have Chris Emery with us today. I'd like to bring him out and talk a bit about the film. Chris Emery is a filmmaker and researcher. He's discovered a consistent pattern of lies and deception in the official accounts of the shootout at Robbie Ridge, the '93 World Trade Center bombing, the Waco massacre, the Oklahoma City bombing, the downing of TWA Flight 800, and the events of 9/11. He is featured in A Noble Lie, Oklahoma City, 1995, which he helped produce. Please, let's give a very warm welcome to Chris Emery.
Thank you, Bonnie. Appreciate that. Thank you so much. Oh, boy. Okay, how are we doing on the audio here? Just go ahead and adjust this. I want to thank you all for attending. Even though I can't see you because of the stage lights, we're going to do the best we can here. I did scribble down a few notes just to cover some thoughts here. Just to give you a quick breakdown, I've got 5 minutes to comment, about 10 minutes, and then I'm going to yield 5 minutes of the rest of the time to Ken and his staff. So they'll go ahead and make some further announcements there. First of all, before I make some comments on the film, I want to really let's give a round of applause for the staff and the volunteers that actually held this conference. This is outstanding. The Northern California 9/11 Truth Alliance, and that's what it is, and it's an alliance of an incredible group of people with an amazing set of skill sets that came together since 2004. This is their 8th annual film festival, and so we want to encourage you to donate. I believe there'll be 4 or 5 people coming through the audience to accept donations, so please be generous with that. This event is notable, and back in 2004 was actually held at the Herbst Theater, from what I understand, and they had to turn away over 300 people. It was a sold-out audience for the David Ray Griffin event, and that DVD is currently on sale in the lobby. It was 9/11 Unanswered Questions. It was also another event in 2004. And then Ken Jenkins, who actually helped co-organize this event this year, as well as subsequent years in the past, has helped edit the Toronto hearings film. So from what I understand, he will be showing that at this event also. So once again, thank you very much. And I'm very honored to be here. This is certainly nothing I take for granted. Reverting back to the film, we were confident that it was good because it was based on fact. Over 90% of our research and the information presented on here was based on the Justice Department's own documents. Through the benevolence of the local, county, state, and federal law enforcement officers, male and female, both civilian and professional, military, retired and active military, members of the state legislature, not only Charles Key, but several of his colleagues that were not able to come on record for obvious reasons. And just a core of 25 people and an expanded network of over 75 volunteers helped us get all this information together over the course of about 16 years. We knew that the movie was good. We had absolutely no idea of the response that we were going to be getting. It has sold extremely well in 21 different countries, in addition to the United States. And I was talking to our editor, Austin Green, who's in charge of actually ordering. We're on our 7th reorder of this movie within the last 3 months. And thanks in no small part to alliances such as Northern California 9/11 Truth Alliance. And we have been actually accepted into 7 different film festivals, given the Best Picture Feature Documentary at the Bare Bones Film Festival in Oklahoma. And we are going to be presented at the American Film Market in Beverly Hills at the end of October. So thank you to all of you and to all of your colleagues for that support. I'm going to really try to watch my time here to be courteous to the folks that are coming after us. So I want to acknowledge James Lane, Austin Green, and members of the film crew, and I went through all the volunteers and so forth. One thing that I really want to get across for you folks in the audience that may consider joining the Alliance or taking on projects such, maybe not quite as big as this one, or to get the truth out on 9/11 or any other heinous crime that was committed by certain factions within the government, don't ever give up. I've been at this for 12 years, and as Bonnie has attested to, I've known her, met her 7 years ago, and there were times before and after that I had considered walking away from this because it was mentally, physically, and financially, it was just overwhelming at times. But I'm glad that I had the support of my colleagues and such people such as you, and being able to speak in front of audiences, even before the movie was released, that encouraged me to go on. And that actually rolled on to the rest of the staff. A couple of the correlations between this case, Oklahoma City, and 9/11, obviously it was a false flag event. What we discovered was that McVeigh was in fact working for the CIA. We did cover that to some extent in the movie. It was shocking to see the documents that were divulged by people that he was under the command of, both in the Persian Gulf War and the CIA. We were getting documents leaked to us, obviously anonymously. It was pretty sensitive. We had it vetted out. We hired private investigators and relied on the work before our film came out of private investigators that vetted a lot of this information. It was true. So he was on the employ of the government. Terry Nichols had very little to do with this case. He was what they call a useful idiot. There were at least 12, if not 18 people involved with the case. In the preparation and the commission of the crime, several hundred members of employees of the United States government that helped cover it up. That's not fact, that's not rumor, that's not conjecture, that's not rumor, I should say, that was based on fact. Some of the unknown connections, we have, of course, Muhammad Atta, and 5 of his colleagues showed up in Oklahoma City in July of 2001, and this was attested by employees retired of the FBI field office in Oklahoma City, that they were there to scout out Oklahoma City as a possible place to hide after 9/11 was committed. I mean, as bizarre as it sounds, we really couldn't figure out why they were there. But Muhammad Atta showed his face in July of 2001. Then witnesses at both the bar and at the actual Oklahoma City National Memorial basically said that, look, he was here within 5 days before 9/11 occurred with 4 other members of his team that were brought in the group of 19. And then after 9/11 occurred, a 5th member of that group of 19 showed up at the same bar the Saturday after. So that put a complete wrench in the works on the whole timeline of 9/11. That's based on fact. We have bar receipts. We have witnesses, at least 3 witnesses that saw them in 2 different locations. So that in itself is pretty chilling. If you want to get more information on that, and I apologize for not bringing the information along, the exact names of the hijackers and so forth, and I'm going to wrap this up in just a second here. We got one of our other folks coming up. Just Google the story. It's called Last Nail in the Coffin, Muhammad Atta, Oklahoma City, and it'll give you a detailed review, and thanks in no small part to a colleague of mine, Jack Blood, excellent radio show host over the years. He wrote a very descriptive and 5-page report on that story. He helped us break it in July of 2008. So that will give you a solid series and a good delineation of the connections between Oklahoma City and 9/11. I don't want to take up any more of your time, folks. I'll be happy to answer questions out in the lobby. But once again, and I do want to share this, I was flying in, final approach into San Francisco from my leg of the flight in from Denver, and it dawned on me, I'm very humbled to be here, and the people that we have here, the filmmakers, the speakers, the researchers, my work pales in compared to theirs. So once again, thank you for welcoming me. Please don't ever give up on getting the truth out, and God bless you all.